Hello, and welcome to the Viva Connections SharePoint Framework Biweekly Sync. It is February 24th, 2022. I'm your host on the call, Patrick Rodgers, and we've got a great agenda for you as always today. I do want to mention real quick, I do wish for the safety and peace for all our friends and community members in Ukraine. We are watching and very sorry for everything that's happening over there. Our agenda for today is latest updates from SharePoint Framework, patterns and practices updates across the program, new community samples. We'll do our optional picture time and together mode. And as well, we've got demos from Sudarshan, Zhao, and Hugo doing change page layout type command set extensions, Microsoft Clarity Application Customizer, and improvements to the Community SPFx Samples Gallery. So very excited, looking forward to those. And real quick, want to talk about ways to join and participate in this community call, as well as the overall Patterns and Practices program. First, I encourage everybody to join us to do a demo. If you'd like to do a demo, please reach out to the form there in the bottom right corner to request a demo spot. We are booked out a few months, so don't be dismayed if you can't get a demo right away, but we will absolutely get you scheduled. We would love to have your demo. I know everybody out there is working on really cool stuff for your customers and your companies. So as appropriate, please do reach out to demo that. Love to see all the great work you all are doing out there in the community. So reach out for those demos. Contribute as well on GitHub. We have a ton of GitHub repositories, and all of them welcome your contributions, which can be reporting issues, submitting pull requests, or helping with issues and questions as well. And you can always provide us feedback on everything around patterns and practices. So how are these calls? How is our documentation? Where else can we help? And positive feedback is okay too, because if you like something we're doing, we can maybe do a little bit more of it. And now we've got all of our many links here. So we have a ton of great developer videos to get you started across a range of developer-focused topics. We have a lot of little animations on the slides now. Community videos, which is going to be the recordings of all of our calls. So if you miss a call or just want to hear one of the calls to see a great demo, check out those community videos. Bunch of great open source repositories, SharePoint, PnP, Office Dev, and Microsoft Graph, all of which have opportunities to participate and join in. So wherever you have interest, please, you are very welcome to join us and participate there. As well, we have a ton of great sample galleries across many different technologies. But all of that stuff can be found at aka.ms/m365pnp, which will give you information about the patterns and practices all up, as well as links to all of those great resources and links to join these community calls if you happen to be missing one of the invites. As well, we have our upcoming Microsoft 365 platform call. These calls are on every Tuesday. Our next one is the 1st of March. That seems impossible that the 1st of March is next Tuesday, but here we are. A weekly call about all the great stuff. And these are from Microsoft employees, so giving the Microsoft view on new engineering topics around what's going on the platform. So we've got Harald with a new profiles photo API for the graph. Sebastian is going to be back for MGT apps with React. And Luca and John will be looking at engineering updates on SharePoint Framework 1.14 and what's coming next. So very excited for all of those 3 sessions. That's going to be next Tuesday, the 1st of March. So definitely come join us and check those out. And now I'm going to hand things over to David for Sharing is Caring.
Thank you, Patrick. Well, friends, as you saw, as Patrick gave us all the info on so many amazing resources and tools for us to use in the community, and we would love for you to use any and all of them as well as contribute back. But we know that there are times when, I don't know, it might be a little intimidating or there might be some hurdles, things like how do I submit a pull request in GitHub? What is a pull request in GitHub? Well, we want to help you in these live hands-on sessions. They are free of charge, safe space opportunities to collaborate with members of the team, MVPs, employees at Microsoft, and other members within the community. They are safe space, not recorded, and so we're going to guide you hands-on how to accomplish a number of tasks within the community, such as your first-time contribution, community docs, utilizing the SPFx tools. If you'd like to present on these calls, as Patrick had mentioned, we want to help you and provide you some guidance. We are here for you to help you. We also have the ever-popular AMAs coming up. Next week is March 1st, as Patrick mentioned, where did the time go? And with that comes AMA with Seb Levert and the Graph team on Graph and MGT. And then we're going to celebrate the 3.0 release of PnPjs on March 15th with Julie and Patrick. So all absolutely free of charge, safe space. Let's collaborate together. You're awesome, and we want to help you do more in the community. ak.ms/sharing is caring. Patrick, back to you.
Thanks for that, David. And moving on to our next slide here. Love these sharing is caring is sessions. Certainly encourage you to check that out. I think, David, you were going to talk about the PnP recognition program.
Yes, I was so excited to hand it back to you.
I know.
Well, I tell you, lots of energy today. PnP recognition, yes, this is a program that we have started quite some time ago in 2021 to celebrate in a formal and official way all the work that you're doing in the community, because we love to recognize you for all the awesome work you're doing. It is another no-cost program. We cover the cost. It is powered by Credly, and we've seen a lot of new badges coming out for blog authors, independent publishers, script samples. We've got more coming out for community docs, PowerShell. We're really getting the full range of programs to recognize the individual contributors as well as the overall contributors. So there's no cost to register, ak.ms/m365pnp-recognition. We do need you to opt in. If you've already opted in for 2021, that's all you need. You're good. We're processing a lot of the contributions from January and February now. So be on the lookout in the next few days if you've contributed. And if not, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We're working on automating it, but it's still a little bit of a work in progress. So again, we love all the work you're doing. You're doing amazing stuff, and we want to recognize it. ak.ms/m365pnp-recognition. Now, Patrick, back to you.
Yeah, you can throw it back to me. And now we'll go over to Vesa for SharePoint Framework updates. Vesa, take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, Patrick, on that one. So first of all, last week we released the SharePoint Framework 1.14. So please update to the latest version if you want to. Obviously, everything like normally in SharePoint Framework is backward compatible. So all of your previous versions will keep on working. But of course, with 1.14, there's a lot of new features and capabilities which you might be interested in, hopefully are interested. So updated focus on Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Viva, and SharePoint Online. So please check it out. Let's go to the following slide. This seems to be an animation. Yeah, there we go. So we got the full slide there. Just a recap on the adoption. We did a all-time record again this week. So right now it's Tuesday, 22nd of February 2022 is the all-time record on the SPFx adoption worldwide. And we do have tens of millions monthly active users for using third-party custom components built with SharePoint Framework across the Microsoft 365. So it's really awesome to see the adoption. And we're hoping, well, we keep on releasing new versions and all of that. And adoption is intended to continue as it is on this right scale. Let's go to the following slide. Quick update on what are we looking into doing after 1.14 and future. So 1.15, we're looking into having a preview out within upcoming weeks. It's missing an S, so I cannot promise a week, but upcoming weeks. And ETA is right now in June, July 2022. So that's coming relatively soon as well for preview and with some new capabilities. Team storage support for partners and SharePoint Framework solutions still under, actually it's a bit delayed, but still under works. And new app catalog experience is starting to roll out right now. It's already available. And then supporting overriding new edit and view experiences with SPFx in this and libraries. That's part of the 1.15 release, and then there's a lot of additional details and improvements coming there as well. But let's jump then to PnPjs. So back to you, Patrick.
Thanks for that, Vesa. And to hear more on that, do come to Luca and John's session next Tuesday to hear more about the future and current state of SPFx. So with that, we'll go to Julie for PnPjs client-side libraries.
Thanks, Patrick. So we did do a release of version 2.12. It was intended to be our last release. We did that on February 11th, but we have since got a PR against version 2, so we'll likely do a 2.13 release in the coming weeks. More on that later when we get that scheduled. The big news, obviously, is that we did release version 3 on February 14th. It was a huge milestone. We were all really excited, and it did go pretty well. We had some hiccups, so we did do some minor releases, patches to fix some minor things. So we're now at version 3.0.2. That was released on February 22nd. If you are using 3.0 or 3.0.1, please go to 3.0.2. It does fix lots of little things that might have been missed or whatever. So please do get to that newer version. We did update some missing v3 documentation that needed to happen that we just didn't have ready for the 14th, but we got to it right this week. So that's all updated. And we did get all the v2 updates that were missing from April. So those are all in. And if you have any feedback on v3 or having any issues, please do post them in our issues list. We will do our best to get to them as fast as we can. And as usual, please follow us on M365 PnPjs on Twitter. And that is all I had. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Julie. And with every major release, there's always a few little hiccups, but appreciate folks reporting those issues so we can get them addressed quickly and get these little patch versions out, to make sure we get that stuff cleaned up just as quick as we can. And I am going to do the updates for CLI for Microsoft 365, new preview version 5 with updates for upgrading SPFX projects to that new 1.14 SPFX version, simplifying updating teams, installing personal Teams apps, and a ton of other great updates for the CLI. You can always install the preview v5 with that PnP/CLI-Microsoft 365 at next, and you can always run their cool Docker containers using the Docker run command you see there. Catch up on the release notes and as well follow them at CLI Microsoft 365. Constantly excited to see the continual evolution and improvement of this tool. So check it out for sure. And the version 5 is the best one yet of that. And now SPFx Reusable Controls. We've got the React Controls 3.6.0 is out with a new adaptive card host control. Very cool way to host some adaptive cards, enhancements for multiple controls, utilizing localization for Swedish and other various fixes. And then we've got the React Property Controls are at 3.5.0 with ACES support and multiple enhancements for things and some other fixes as well. You can check out the release notes. And these, again, remain a great way to get your project started quickly with ready-to-go controls that you can build out and run very quickly in your projects to get a great out-of-the-box look and harness that functionality. And with that, we'll go to PnP Modern Search, which I will do, aka.ms/PnP-search. So that's building this great flexible search experience using modern web parts right in SharePoint. So you can compose these things together. We had a demo, I want to say two times ago for this call, all about the search stuff. So you can go back and check out those recordings. Really great capabilities there to build out these search features. So building modern search experiences, version 4.5.4 is out. That's the February 2022 release. And then the version 3 stuff is really in maintenance mode. So if you can and get a chance, please do update to the version 4 branch as all the new work is going there. And with that, I'll hand things over to Hugo for PnP Samples.
Awesome. Thank you. So we have a few updates to the SPFX web part sample. That's aka.ms/SPFX-webparts. And the 3 updates, one of them is a new sample from Adam Wojcik. It's saved to user application personal folders in OneDrive. So this is, and we've already seen a sample that does this in our repo. This is actually a new way of doing it, and one that actually also demonstrates how to use a SPFX library that you can reuse across your applications. So it's a great sample. It is, the pull request is pending because Adam and I are working on making it even better by making sure that it works in a container. So watch for this update soon. We also have an update from Don Kirkham on the React functional component web part with data fetch, where Don kindly updated it to SPFX 1.14, and Chandani Prajapati updated the data table sample to SPFX 1.14. So we have tons of sample. We welcome you also to contribute to samples. And if you're bored and you're looking for stuff to do, go take a look at the issues list and look for anything that is tagged as help wanted or good first issue. That's always a great opportunity for you to contribute. And if you don't know how to contribute to these samples, feel free to sign up for the Sharing is Caring session. Thanks everyone for your contributions, and back to you, David.
Thank you, Hugo. PnP SPFx adaptive card extensions, one of the newest SPFX samples gallery. We have 3 amazing new samples this week. Siddharth has a My Shifts, allowing you to see your shifts according to teams. Amory Thomas, Join New Teams, is going to show the different new teams that are available and your ability to join them. And then Anoop Tati on office locations. It's going to actually show a map and a location of the office. You can get directions, some really, really cool samples here. We're in the middle of processing them, so be on the lookout for them soon. And we just saw a brand new one come in today on weather, so we'll get that process and added to this slide in the next couple of weeks. Again, open for more contributions. Thank you all, and we're going to have that Viva Connections ACES Sharing is Caring session soon. We've got some meetings scheduled to wrap that up, so we're so excited. Again, aka.ms/SPFX-ACES. Patrick, back to you.
All right, now it's back to me for optional picture time. So folks that want to come turn on your cameras and get into that optional picture time, please do.
1 second, I will share my screen, and we can, for example, show today a heart sign or something if people don't feel good about waving. It's been a pretty stressful day throughout the world, but let's see how many people we're getting. A few more, maybe a few more.
If you guys don't join, I'm going to have to join the picture.
I'm going to start the recording. 1 second. We're still getting few. One more. Okay, so I guess it's time to start recording and waving hands. I'm trying to do this in the right way. Hearts are so difficult. Excellent. Thanks, everybody, and all the best and peace across the world. Thank you. Let's go back on the demos of today.
All right, so jumping over to the demos, Sudarshan, if you're ready to go and want to take over.
Thanks, Patrick. So let me share my screen. Hi, everyone. My name is Sudarshan Kesavanarayanan, and I'm working as a software architect at NTT. I'm also an MVP on Office development. And these are my social links which you can connect me on. So today we are going to see about a command extension named Change Page Layout. So where you can change the layout of the site pages in SharePoint Online from article to home or home to article. As of now, only two types are supported. And you can find the sample at this link. SPFx extensions. So features. So as I mentioned previously, so you can change from article to home and vice versa. And you also have an option to change multiple pages. So it's not page by page. You can choose multiple pages and then you can update it. And there is also a validation where you cannot update if the page is checked out by other users. And it also provides to check whether the page is supported, because there are homepage, dashboard page, and other types of news posts and news link which are not supported. So those will be displayed as unsupported. And this command is the command extension will be displayed only to the site pages list, not to the document libraries or other list. So this is basically a screenshot of the page where you can, once the pages are selected, you can see the extension. And once you click on the command extension, you can see all the pages where it provides a toggle button. You can choose whichever page you want to change it and then click on save. So moving back to the code. So let me explain the main things. So after that, we will see a demo. So the first is elements.xml, where it is targeted to site pages. The registration ID is 119 or 850. As I mentioned, this is targeted to the site pages. So these are all the updates for the element.xml and the client side instance. So there are no properties given here. Moving back to the main methods. So this method get item info. So once the pages are selected, all the pages ID will be passing to the function where I'll be getting all these fields, the title, page layout, type, and the author. So, and based on this, I'll return all those information. And after getting all those information, I'll be displaying in the model dialog. And based on the selection, whether it is article or home, so I'll be updating the page layout. So this is on changing the, on triggering the toggle. So this functions will be executed. So the update page, once you click on the save, I'll be passing the selected pages, and whichever the pages are modified, only those pages ID will be passed and the page layout will be updated. So it's simple, very simple extension. And I'm using PnP.js library, and I'm also using the batch method so that all the pages are combined and then executed in a batch. So let us move on to the demo. So here I have installed the extension. So let me open a few page. So basically the main feature of this page is to, sometimes you can see the placeholder here and you can see all the content. Since I am showing it in a large screen, you are able to see all the content. Sometimes if the users are viewing it 15-inch or 13-inch laptop, sometimes this header will occupy the entire space. But if you want to focus on only to the content, in that case, there are some articles which are available which will use Power Automate to change it. So instead of deploying the Power Automate and then configuring it, so I have just developed an extension. So for example, here the test news 2 and FAQ page, it has a page header where the contents are, you have to drill down to see the content. So once you select the pages, so automatically the extensions are enabled. When you click on the change layout, so it will show the pages by the author, and it will also show currently whether it is an article or home. So you can choose you want the home layout and then just click save. That's it. The pages are updated. So when you refresh back, the header is gone. So you can focus on the content. So the same way, when you try to save it again, because I'll be checking for the update. So I don't want to make unnecessary transaction calls to the SharePoint. So I'll be checking on the update whether actually there is an update to save or not. If there is no update, then I won't make any calls to SharePoint. Okay. So when you are selecting the pages, so if you can see some of the page, because I have enabled Viva Connection Dashboard, which is not supported, so it will show as not supported. And some of the pages which are checked out by other users, you cannot change unless it is checked in and published by the users. OK, that's it, Patrick. Back to you.
Awesome stuff. Very cool demo. Neat use of PnPjs. Nice to see that in there, and good practice there to not do updates and not do activity to SharePoint unless you really need to. So nice work there. With that, we'll go to João Ferreira for Microsoft Clarity Application Customizer.
All right, let me share my screen. All right, so my name is João Ferreira. I'm a technical lead at Busy, and today I will explain you a bit how you can track the usage of modern SharePoint pages using Microsoft Clarity with an application customizer deployed to site collections or globally to the entire tenant. So for those of you that don't know what Microsoft Clarity is, it's a tracking tool. Most of you should be familiar probably with Google Analytics. This is a tracking tool similar to Analytics with more functions, actually more similar to Hotjar than Google Analytics, but it allows you to generate instant heat maps by plugging it into your site. This is one of the examples. You get session recording. So if you just installed a fancy PnP web part in your page and you want to see if your users are interacting with it or not, or if you should change the location of the web part, you can use this to see how is it going. And it also generates this kind of reports that allow you to understand how users are interacting with the pages. And not covering this session, but it also has an integration with Google Analytics. So if you are already using and tracking your site with Analytics, you can plug the two together and get it monitored using Clarity and Analytics. The solution to implement this, as I said in the beginning, there's a SharePoint Framework extension and application customizer. And the application customizer, what it does is deploying this Microsoft Clarity JavaScript file to the site. There's a unique tracking number that needs to be deployed along with this file, so it knows what exactly is your site. And to deploy this, then the extension is installed in the site. For those of you that don't know what is an extension, an application customizer particularly, it is used to typically create headers and footers in modern SharePoint pages. In this particular scenario, we will not use any of these functionalities. We will do a simple thing as inject a JavaScript file into the page so the page gets tracked. But better than explaining this is seeing it in action. So let's jump into Microsoft Clarity. So Microsoft Clarity, it's available through this URL, clarity.microsoft.com. You can sign in with your Microsoft account, MSA or corporate account, Facebook and Google. And then once you sign in, you need to create a project. When you create a new project, you need to provide name and the website URL and select a category to what you will be tracking. And then you need to configure a couple of things before installing it in your SharePoint site. And that is done by clicking in this settings icon and by going to the Setup tab. Once you go to the Setup tab, you will find the how to install Clarity, and this is what you will need. It gives you the entire script, but the only thing that you really need is this code. And once you get this code, then you are ready to deploy the solution. Before we jump into the code and show you how this was built and how this gets installed in SharePoint, one thing that it's important if you will be deploying this to your SharePoint, especially if you will be deploying it for the entire tenant, is the masking settings. So this option here will allow you to restrict what users monitoring the recordings will be able to see in terms of text. So right now for this one, it's balanced. There's some text that it's masked, but if you will be deploying this globally, potentially you will get recordings from sites that are not shared with you or that are not shared with the user that's watching the recording. So strict is what I recommend you to select. And this way, every single character will be transformed in the dot, and you will not be able to read any information that is in those sites. Well, once you get this configured, then you just need to deploy the application. But before showing you how the application gets deployed, let me just show you how simple is the code in the application customizer. So the only method that we have here is the onInit, and it has just one property, that it's the Clarity ID. There's a validation to see if the Clarity ID has a value or not. And then instead of having here the static ID, this could well be a static ID, but since this is in the PnP repo, it's a generic solution. So it has the property in here, and this then deploys the script. Once you get it compiled and you get the SPPKG file, you can then install it on your SharePoint site. And as I mentioned before, it can be installed in the global app catalog or in the site collection app catalog. For this particular scenario, I will show you here the site collection app catalog. The app was deployed here already. And if I go here to the tenant-wide extensions list, and this list might not be visible in your site collection, but it will be there. You can access to it directly using the URL. Once the solution gets deployed and installed, you will get a new entry in this list. And here in the component properties, you just need to put the ID as it is in here. Once you do this, and if the solution is enabled, then it will start tracking immediately the usage of your page. I have here already a few things to show you. So here is the dashboard on one of the pages on dev site that I have. This is used just by me, so there's not much data here, but we have recordings and we have heat maps. So the recordings are available here at the top. If I click in one of this, you will be able to see the mouse moving around and me interacting with the page and the clicks. As you can see, and I don't know if this is big enough, there are certain areas that are shown with dots instead of characters. This is done automatically by Clarity because this is not in the restricted mode. If you select restricted, everything will be shown with dots. And another thing that you can do is access to the heat map and see what are the areas that users are interacting with the most. So this one over here is not showing much, but let me see if I can get something more with more information. We change this to another time frame. Whatever, apply. All right, and here it is, the heat map. This was the site that I used to test a few list formattings, and as you can see, I was mainly interacting with this area of the page and this area here where both formattings were installed. As you can see, I'm scrolling and these numbers are moving into the page, but the scroll of the page itself, it doesn't move. This is a problem that Clarity has with SharePoint. Clarity was built to be used in public sites, and it is counting on the scroll to be in the body, but in SharePoint it is not. So you are not able by default to scroll and see the entire page. However, I did a custom bookmarklet that I have here, this fixed clarity. It's a small JavaScript file that changes the height of the snapshot. And if I click here now, I change the DOM in the clarity, and I'm able to see the entire page and the heat map for the entire page. This is pretty much it. A very simple solution that allows you to integrate two different tools from Microsoft. If you want to give it a try and install it in your system, and let me go back to the presentation, you can find it in the GitHub repository. Here is the link for it. And if you have any question about it, you can reach me directly on Twitter or through my blog. The Twitter handle and the blog URL are in here in this slide. And I'll make sure that I will post this bookmarklet in the chat window and share it somewhere else so you guys can also get it and take advantage of it in your own solutions. All right, back to you, Patrick.
Awesome. Very cool stuff. Clarity is a really neat new thing. I know some other folks have been playing with it, so it's really cool. Definitely check that out. Great sample there on how to integrate that, and encourage folks to check that out. And finally, we've got Hugo with improvements to the Community SPFx Samples Gallery. Hugo, are you ready to go?
Let me get it started. Back to you, Patrick.
All right, back to me. And we're ready to wrap. Yep.
All right, let's see. A lot of the demos that I do, I like to have a safety net, and I like to pre-record a lot of my demos just in case, npm install takes longer and everything like that. But today, this is a no safety net demo. So if we see delays or anything like that, I might try to distract you with something else, like, oh, look over there, a bird. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Hugo, and I'm lucky that I get to manage the SPFx web part sample repository and extension repository. I get to see all sorts of really cool pull requests and lots of cool samples. And I get to try every sample. I test every sample. I look at every sample to make sure that the code is not horrific. And you'd be surprised that we rarely have anything where we're like, oh, no, we can't show people that. That's just bad coding. All the samples we get are usually really awesome, and they always demonstrate a cool concept. Or sometimes, like some of the contributions that are made by the people on this call, we'll get samples that are full-on solutions that, hey, you could probably take it, package it, and deploy it to production. Now, let's just be clear that these samples are really intended to be just that. They're intended to be samples. They're not intended to be for you to just take them and put them in production. You can if you want to, but that's not the intent. And so because of that, one of the things that we try to do all the time is make it easy for you to get to the code really, really easily and get started using the samples. Now, here's the problem. With a lot of SPFX solutions, or pretty much all Node.js solutions, is that there's a few challenges. First of all, the GitHub repo that contains the samples is actually quite large. I can't remember how many samples we have, but we have a lot of samples. So that's the problem. Is what if I want to look at a simple web part, just to look at a concept, and I really just kind of want to play with that sample without having to clone the entire repo and things like that. So let me show you a few things that we can do. The first thing that we can talk about is when you go to a repo, and I'll try to click and see if it's, maybe I jinxed my demo by saying the demos has no safety net. There you go. All right. So if you go to the actual repository itself, right, one of the cool things that you may not be aware of, because this is a relatively new feature of GitHub, is that if you go to the code screen and you click on the dot key or the period key, it'll actually do something that looks like it's actually opening it in Visual Studio Code, but it's actually in the browser. In fact, if I mouse over, you'll see that I'm actually in a browser here. So this is really cool because it allows you to actually go look at code directly without having to download the entire repo. And you'll see that all the samples are here. And you can just, I'll just randomly pick one here. And you can actually go directly into the code and take a look at how it's implemented. Really cool feature, and you've got syntax highlighting, you got all that. In fact, as you can see here, you have the multi-tab as well, so you can open multiple tabs and things like that. I use that a lot when I need to just quickly see, hey, how many people are using this feature, right? How many samples do we have, or things like that. I won't even bother downloading the repo. Or cloning the repo. I'll actually open it directly from there. So this is, again, number one tip is if you just want to look at some code and you don't want to do the boring, let me look at the HTML version of the code, but let me look at the rich, syntax highlighted code, you can absolutely do that. Now, what if I actually want to download the sample and start playing with it? What are the barriers to that? So the first thing I'll do here is remind you that, and by the way, I'm using the SPFx web part sample gallery to do this, but remember that all these samples are also available through adoption.microsoft.com, where all the samples that we have across all the repositories can be found in one place. In this particular case, I happen to know that I want to talk about a web part, so I went directly to the web part sample gallery. But again, if you don't know whether it's going to be a web part, an extension, or a team sample, or an ACE, or anything like that, you can go to adoption.microsoft.com and actually use the sample browser to find the right sample. Right? We should be focusing on doing the right thing for our customers and to meet our business needs, instead of worrying about what technology I'm going to be using or things like that. All right, so when I am in the SPFx web part sample gallery, I can look for samples by things like by framework. So for example, I want to use Vue, I want to use React or JavaScript, I can do that. But one of the samples I want to show you is I want to search by SPFX version. Now, we have kind of every version of SPFX all the way to GA, and even, in fact, before SPFX was generally available, which is now 5 years ago, by the way, as of yesterday. So kudos to the SPFX team. So we got samples that date 5 years ago, right? And you might say, well, why would we have old samples from 5 years ago? Again, keep in mind that there are some people that are still, I just recently worked with a customer that was migrating their SharePoint 2013 and 2010 implementation to the cloud. So there are still customers, as much as I like to be, leading edge and always being ahead of technology, there are still customers that have made huge investments in older, what's the best way to say it, legacy technologies that maybe they're not ready to move away from, right? Because maybe they're working in a highly secure environment and they want to make sure that they've properly assessed the latest technology before they can move forward. So when we have older samples, like the ones that are in SPFX 1.4 or earlier, just keep in mind that those are probably still relevant for a lot of our customers and a lot of your peers. So we're not ready quite yet to get rid of those old samples, but just keep in mind from your perspective that you might want to be using the latest version of the samples if you have the opportunity or the luxury of being able to be on the leading edge of technology. Now here's the challenge. With every version of SPFX, we have potentially compatibility issues with which version of Node that it works with. And we have something called the SPFX matrix, which I'm sure David is going to be posting a link to in the chat. But the SPFX compatibility matrix is something that tells you, here's what version of SPFX we're using, here's what version of Node it's compatible with, so that you can actually see, okay, well, what do I need to do for my infrastructure? Now, the other problem with that is that, well, what if I'm really cool and I get to work with SPFX 1.14, so my workstation, my development workstation is configured to run the latest version of Node that SPFX supports and all the cool stuff, the latest version of Gulp. but I need to find a sample that's maybe an older sample. So you can actually go do that. You can actually go find an older sample, and you can download it. I'm going to go pick a sample that maybe not so old, but I just thought it was cute, so I figured I'd use that. So if I look for a sample called Parker, because, you know, Parker is our mascot. So we have a sample by Adam here. I actually think that was Adam's first sample that he contributed. So Adam, if you're on the call, feel free to correct me. But if you go to this sample, it tells you, okay, so this is the version right here under compatibility. It says this is the version that was built in. This is a version of Node that it'll run with, and it'll tell you all sorts of stuff, like whether it's compatible with SharePoint Online, with SharePoint 2019, 2016, whether it runs on the local workbench, the hosted workbench, and the new feature, which is whether it works on a remote container. Now, if you don't know what a remote container is the ability for you to say, I'm going to package all the dependencies and all the things that makes up the environment that I need to be able to build this web part. I'm going to package that with the code itself. And then that container can actually be hosted on your machine if you use something like Docker for desktop, or you can actually move it to the cloud using all sorts of fun technologies like Kubernetes or CodeWare. I can't remember what it's called in GitHub now. Workspaces, Codespaces. I think that's what it's called. So really cool, right? I can actually now bundle all the dependencies I need to be able to open a solution right away and run it without having to switch versions of Node, install dependencies and things like that. Now, the other thing that we have made available to a lot of the samples is this cool thing here. Instead of cloning the entire repository, you can actually just download the solution as a zip file. So let me do that. And we've started adding this tag to every README. It's not quite available in every single sample, but again, we're adding them. And keep in mind that every time we make changes like this, we try to test every single change. And when you have close to, well, I think in total, we have close to 900 samples across all the repositories, you can imagine the effort and the amount of time that's involved in implementing these features. But if I take this zip file now that it's downloaded for me, and if I actually kind of move it where you can see it, you'll actually see that this is not the entire GitHub repo. This is only the sample. This is the stuff you need to run this. So let me extract it. And it insists on putting all my windows to the next screen here. So let me just put this to my SPFx folder. And let me remove the extra space. So here, I'm going to extract this to find Parker. All right. Now, I happen to have a command line that I opened. Let's see. So if I go to cd sample, what is it called again? React find Parker, React find Parker. Oh, all right. I'll do it this way. I'll just do, this is a trick that David Warner taught me, is if I type command from here, I actually will launch the command prompt right into this folder. But wait, if you order now, if you type code space dot, you can also launch, of course, it'll launch it in a different window, but you can actually launch the window itself or the Visual Studio Code into a new window. So again, if you had been downloading the repo, even though I'm typing really slow right now, you would still be waiting for the repo to be cloning. We already have the sample downloaded. We already have it opened. And, there's a little something missing here because right now, this version of the sample is actually running on a completely different version of SPFX that I have currently running in my machine and a different version of Node. So something that we've added, and I've already demoed this a couple of weeks ago, I think, but something that we've added to 99% of all the samples that we have in the SPFx samples is a dev container. And if you're wondering, how do I know if it's compatible with containers? Again, the README will tell you that we've already tested it in a container. The other thing that you'll see is I have a dev container folder here that contains the definition for my container. And now on my machine, I happen to have Docker for desktop installed. So all I should be able to do, and by the way, I also have an extension that is called Remote Containers. So it's a Visual Studio Code extension that I've got installed on my machine. And it adds this cool functionality of if it detects a container, and you may have seen it when I first opened the solution, it actually prompted me to reopen it in a container. If you miss the opportunity to do that, you can just say reopen in container. And what should happen if the demo gods are with me? We should be able to see that it'll actually launch the same solution that I opened on my local desktop in a remote container. And it'll install the dependencies and then launch it directly into, well, in this case, it's a Linux container, I guess. So now I should be able to do gulp. Let's just do gulp serve directly. So again, I'm opening a brand new container that I just downloaded. I'll say gulp serve, no browser, so that it doesn't try to launch Edge in my, oops, I guess I forgot to do this. Okay, let's do this. Of course, that's a demo. It happens all the time. I'll just completely rebuild the container here, which is actually, if you've never opened a sample or never opened a container that uses this container template, this is something that we do automatically for you when you open the sample, is we actually start building all the dependencies for you. And one of the things that we end up doing as well is we end up creating the certificates for you to be able to debug the sample. So now this is going to take a little bit of time. Let's see, because again, Node, what it has to do is it has to download the samples from the internet, those modules, depending on how fast your internet speed is going and whether you're sharing video and things like that, you might get slower performance. But once it's downloaded the modules locally, it has to unpack the modules because they're usually, I don't know if it's a zip or rar or anything like that or tar, but it has to unpack the module and put it on your local drive. So we'll let this run. And while it's doing this, let me actually show you where I'm getting the information about the module. First of all, we have every sample that is container enabled has a dev container.json. Now, this is not something, I want to be clear, this is not something that is unique to SPFx samples. This is something that you can absolutely start using right now in your own projects if you want to. Just think about it. Again, I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but imagine the dependencies that are, or the time that's involved in getting a new team member added to your project. And you're like, oh, well, it's not even worth. We have 2 weeks left on this project. It's going to take this person 2 weeks to even just get set up with the right environment. So if you actually go to the container, the dev container.json definition, you'll see that we already predefined things like what version of the Docker image we're using, what version of ports that we're using to redirect from within the remote container to your machine, as well as a startup script that we launch for you at the start of setting up the machine. And this is what's actually currently running right now, is this script right here, where we already, we actually go install, we go generate the certificate, we convert the certificate to a Windows and a non-Windows type of certificate, so you can actually deploy the certificate for you. Now, when I'm talking about a certificate here, you might be saying, well, what are you talking about certificate here? Like, I'm running this locally. Yes, right? When you're debugging, if you're debugging the solution, you're going to be debugging the code in, well, if you're not using remote containers, you're running it on your local machine. But if you're running in a remote container, you're still running it in some kind of machine that just happens to be running in a different kind of workspace itself. Instead of being in Windows, it's in Linux. But when you go to the hosted workbench, one of the things that you'll see is it'll actually try to go to your local host and try to go get the manifest.js for your sample so that it can actually run your web part in the workbench, but also serve the code from that JS file. And because, we want to make sure that we're safe with everything we do, we actually use an SSL certificate that is issued for your machine so that we can go back and forth between the cloud, the hosted workbench, to your local machine without issues. And that's why we do this the first time that you open the machine. Now, again, you can see that this is taking a long time, and that's one of the reasons why we set up the remote containers so that when you open a container the first time, if you've never kind of used this container image, we'll actually set up this for you. If you just reopen an existing container that you've opened before, for maybe a sample you've reopened before, you won't have to do this again. Of course, unless you're trying to do a demo about it, then you might have to do it again. All right, so if we look at the extension here that we're using for this, so remote containers, so it'll actually tell you all the requirements that you have here is you need to actually have a Docker container, and it should actually show you in the instructions here the prerequisites that you need, and then how to use remote development here. Now, I like to, of course, I use Windows machine because this machine was provided to me by Microsoft. But there is a step-by-step tutorial that you can use if you're not sure how to use remote development in containers outside of samples. This is huge because, again, I actually when I process all the pull requests, instead of, because what I used to do before is I used to switch back and forth between versions of nodes and reconfigure my machine and use Node Virtual Machine, Node Version Manager. I always forget my acronyms. NVM, Node Version Manager. All right, so if you take a look at this, this is actually exactly what we started with to actually build the thing. All right, so let's go back to our sample here. Look at that. It's generating a certificate for me. And I want to show you as it's doing this, that generating the certificate should create new files in the package, in the solution. Now, the one thing that we do when we generate those, this CER and the PM certificates, we install them in the dev container, and we remove those images or those files from the Git, or we add it to the Git ignore, because we don't ever want to check in our certificates to a source code, obviously. So here I've added the CER and the PM. And if I say done here, and I reopen the terminal, and the demo guides are with me, obviously, now I should be able to just say gulp serve. No browser. I've got a few more minutes to get this going. I think we can make it happen. And again, if I was just cloning a repo, I'd probably still be cloning the repo by now. All right, so what I can do with the certificate here is I can actually just go and download the certificate. Now you might say, wait a minute, why are you downloading the certificate? Why are you downloading the certificate? This is on your machine. Remember that as far as Visual Studio Code is concerned, this container is a remote container. It's a completely separate machine. And in fact, as we're evolving this feature, you might actually not be running this on your machine. It might be a hosted remote container somewhere in the cloud. So I'm downloading the certificate because I want to have this certificate on my local machine, not my remote machine. And so I can actually install this certificate. All right, so let's just do this. In fact, I think that I had prepared yeah, in my downloads, I should have just the certificate file, the sample code, and oops, I forgot I had left my Death Star plans here. All right, so one of the things that I can do here is I could right-click on the certificate, say install, but because I'm the world's laziest developer, I like to use a command line that my friend Don Kirkham created for me, where I can actually just add the certificate to my local machine. So there you go. And then last minute of this demo, if everything goes well, let's go to my workbench. Let me refresh the workbench. Now, I might get a warning like this, and that's because, again, if we look at the network traffic here, where's my network? You'll see that I'm getting denied here, but that's okay because what I can do here is I've done this before once or twice. I actually have added a shortcut to the local host. If I just refresh the page now, and now that I've installed the certificate, I should be able to see the web part. And if I add the web part, well, it's not happy. This particular web part doesn't work on here. But if I actually run it on a page itself, come on. I have the now Find Parker web part running on this thing, and hours of fun. So that was a demo on how you can now, instead of downloading the entire repo, you can download a zip file, and how instead of switching back and forth between versions of SPFx and Node, you can use remote containers. That's it for me. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Back to you, Patrick, for one last time.
All right. Thank you, Hugo. Thanks to Darson, Zhao, and Hugo for the great demos today. Thanks for all that, and thank all of you for joining us today on the call. Thank you again. The recording will be available in 24 hours on the YouTube channel there, aka.ms/m365pnp/videos. Again, we cannot make the Teams recording public for all directly, so it will be available on the YouTube channel in about 24 hours. Follow us on Twitter at Microsoft365Dev and M365PnP. Our next Viva Connections SPFx call 2 weeks, March 10th at the same time. And our next general dev call will be March 3rd. That's next Thursday at the same time. You can get all the available community calls, aka.ms/M365PnP. And as well, lots of other great community calls. You can follow the links there to get the invites. Want to thank everybody for joining us. Again, thanks to all our presenters. Thank you to all of you for all your great work in the community. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.